Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to another edition of Building on a Budget, where we give players an inexpensive way to enter competitively into the Pokemon TCG. Today we're going to look at a deck that's fairly interesting, using some new cards from the brand new set Furious Fist, and it's going to be a deck revolving around Donphan. Now Donphan is a card that's been around for a while. It's just an uncommon Pokemon, so very easy to get. And it has a pretty simple attack. For 1 fighting energy, it has spinning turn, does 40 damage, and then you switch with one of your benched Pokemon. Now, that in itself, not the greatest attack. Only 40 damage, not going to be great. However, there was a new card released called Strong Energy, where it can only be attached to your fighting Pokemon, but then that Pokemon does 20 more damage if it has this strong energy attached. So now instead of that 40 damage, we are doing 60 damage for a single energy. Now that's pretty strong, and then we can make it even stronger. We can use either Muscle Band, which will work against everything, does 20 additional damage to your opponent's active Pokemon when you attack. So now with a Muscle Band and a strong energy, Donphan is doing 80 damage for a single energy, and now we're getting into business. Or we can use Silver Bangle against a Pokemon EX, and this will do 30 more damage. So that'll be a 90 damage attack with Spinning Turn for a single energy. And that's pretty cool, right? So we just have a 3-3 line of Donphan, 3 of these Phanpy, and then 3 Donphan. We really shouldn't need more than this because Donphan is constantly using Spinning Turn to go to the bench. Now, one of the cool things is you do get to switch into a Pokemon. So whatever we switch into, we want to have some cool feature. The main one we're going to use is Trevenant. So Trevenant has the ability Forest Curse. As long as it's your active Pokemon, your opponent can't play any item cards. So this can be a very disruptive strategy. We've seen it in the past with Excelgor in Trevenant. Now we're just going to use Donphan in Trevenant instead. When you use Spinning Turn, you can just switch into this Trevenant, and your opponent can't play any of those useful item cards. So this is a very good, powerful Pokemon to switch into. And then if we have Floatstone attached to it, we can simply retreat it for free on the following turn. So Trevenant and Donphan have some nice synergy here. Now, we do have a 3-3 line of this Trevenant, 3 Phantump, and 3 Trevenant. However, there are some situations where our opponent just has some big Pokemon EX that we can't deal with, and Trevenant would just get knocked out if we promoted it, so we're also going to run 2 of these Suicune. Suicune has the ability Safeguard, prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon by Pokemon EX. So if there's just a big bad Pokemon EX out there, and nothing you switch into can take a hit from it, try sending out Suicune. It can't be hurt by Pokemon EX, so it's a great Pokemon to throw out there. So this deck is all about using hit and run strategies, running to the right Pokemon to disrupt your opponent, and then eventually you just wear them down with constant spinning turn attacks. Now sometimes we can actually get even trickier and switch into Snorlax. Snorlax has the ability Block. As long as it's your active Pokemon, your opponent's active Pokemon can retreat. So say we hit something for a lot of damage, but it's simply going to retreat after we hit it, and we won't be able to knock it out. Well, they can switch into Snorlax, and then they won't be able to retreat. So this could be a good way to trap something up there. Just a nice option as well. So those are our main Pokemon we want to switch into. We do have a couple other Pokemon as well. Number 1 is going to be Mr. Mime. It has the ability Bench Barrier, prevent all damage done to your benched Pokemon by attacks. So Donphan constantly is moving to the bench, so we want to protect it with Bench Barrier. Right? We don't want things like Kyurem's Frost Spear or Landorus EX's Hammerhead getting to the Donphan on the bench. Mr. Mime just puts up that invisible wall and stops it from happening. And then the last Pokemon we have is just this Terrakion, which seems to always be in the format. It's not a very impressive card by any means, it's not overwhelmingly strong, but it does dish out some decent damage. For 2 energy, we can do Retaliate, 30 plus 60 if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack. during his or her last turn. So we can use the strong energy on this as well, along with Muscle Band, along with Silver Bangle. There's just all sorts of ways to power up Terrakion for even more damage. This can be a good cleaner Pokemon sometimes, when you just need one more big hit to win the game. So here are the Pokemon we have here. Just a reminder, this is a deck for the new standard format. There was a rotation. Now, the standard format is Boundaries Crossed through Furious Fists. That will be the upcoming tournament format for standard play. That means we don't have the sets Next Destinies, Dark Explorers, or Dragons Exalted anymore, and no more Dragon Vault. And a lot of the promo cards we saw in the last format, like Tropical Beach, are no longer in the format either. I'm not sure exactly where the promos begin. I believe it's around promo number 100, BW 100. Those are legal and onward. Just want to throw that in there for a second. Okay, so let's take a look at the trainer cards for this deck, since trainers are most often an interesting point to look at. Since we no longer have Level Ball in the format, to search out a little basic Pokemon, we're going to run Pokemon Fan Club. It's a supporter card that allows us to search for 2 basic Pokemon and put them into our hand. So this is just a nice supporter you want to play down on the first turn. Go ahead, search for 2 Pokemon, get them onto the bench, get your setup going. So for Pokemon Fan Club, we want to play as many of those as possible, since we want that on the first turn. We also have 4 Professor Sycamore. Just discard your hand and draw 7 cards. Very standard supporter. Very powerful draw card. 4 N. Each player shuffles in and then draws a card for each prize card they have remaining. Now this is actually a potentially difficult card to get. Sometimes it can be a little pricey, but this was given out as a league promo. So if you do attend a Pokemon League, these were given out. So it's very easy to access these cards now. Our other supporters, we're going to have 2 Colress. You shuffle in your hand and then draw a card for each benched Pokemon in play. So anywhere from 0 to 10. Usually not so great early on, but great as the game progresses. And then we also have 2 Lysander. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon, so you just get to grab one of your opponent's benched Pokemon and bring it to the active spot. We have 2 because Donphan is not a deck that gets one-hit knockouts very often. Normally we use Spinning Turn on something, and then a lot of the time it'll just retreat. So we do need this Lysander sometimes to bring it back out and finish it off after it retreats. So 2 of them seems like the right number. For our Ace Spec card for the deck, we only get 1 of these. I'm actually going to play Master Ball. Now normally I would not advocate playing Master Ball, but some of the Ace Spec cards are actually pretty pricey. Computer Search or Dowsing Machine would probably be the Ace Spec of choice. If you can't access those though, Master Ball is a very cheap alternative, and it's just a pretty solid card. You get to search for any Pokemon. It's not the ideal Ace Spec card, but we'll go with it for this one. For our other searching cards, we have 2 Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards, search for a Pokemon. And then 2 Evo Soda. You basically just get to search your deck for an evolution and then evolve one of your Pokemon in play. So basically a free evolution search. You get to evolve your Pokemon directly, and it gets the job done. We've already looked at the tools, the 4 Float Stone, the 2 Muscle Band, and the 2 Silver Bangle. We also have 2 Fighting Stadium. This can add damage as well when your Donphan attacks. The attacks of each fighting Pokemon in play do 20 more damage to the defending Pokemon EX. So, what we were talking about before, against a Pokemon EX, if we use Spinning Turn with a strong energy that's already 60 damage, with that Silver Bangle we're doing 90 damage, and then with this Fighting Stadium we're doing a whopping 110 damage to a Pokemon EX for a single energy. And that is pretty darn powerful, if you ask me. Our last couple cards here, we have 2 Switch. Pretty simple. You switch. That is to be the most straightforward card in the game. And then 1 Startling Megaphone is our last trainer card. Discard all Pokemon tools attached to each of your opponent's Pokemon. This is good in all sorts of situations, but namely good against that pesky Garbodor, whose Garbotoxin ability shuts off your abilities. So we like to play this to stop that Garbotoxin. Our energy are going to be pretty simple. 4 of these strong energy, we want these, so we're going to play 4 of them. 4 fighting energy, since we can use these to attack as well. And then 1 double colorless energy because Donphan actually has a second attack as well. It's very costly, 2 fighting, 2 colorless, but it is very powerful. Wreck does 80, and then if there's any stadium in play, it does 60 more, and then you discard that stadium. Now, this can do tons of damage. If there's a stadium, you're already doing 140 damage. If you're going up against a Pokemon EX, let's say you have a muscle band attached, and then a fighting stadium out there, well, you would actually still get the plus 20 from the fighting stadium before it gets discarded, so 140 plus 20 plus 20, that's 180 damage with Wreck. So you can wipe out a Pokemon EX just like that with Wreck, so we want to keep that double colorless energy as an option, just in case. So here we have it, the Donphan deck. This is a pretty cheap deck to build by all means. If you wanted to build this deck from scratch, that means all 60 cards. If you wanted to purchase them, I looked up the prices online. It would be about $70 total to build this entire deck. That's not a bad price at all. And just for the Pokemon would be about $17. The priciest card would actually be this Trevenant, which runs about $3 to $4 on most online card sites. So here you have it. Here is our budget deck, first one I've done in a while, and pretty excited about it. So hope you guys enjoy this deck. Of course, I did get a game with it on Pokemon TCG online, so let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Now, Donphan, it is a cheap deck. It is very inexpensive to make, but it actually can be a little tricky to play sometimes. So I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of display the deck and show how complicated it can be sometimes, and just to give you a general idea of how the deck should play out. So my opponent is going to start off with a Pokemon Fan Club, and go ahead and search for a Spritzy and a Kangaskhan EX, and a Level Ball. Well, looks like my opponent hasn't quite gotten with the rotation yet. It's okay. It didn't officially happen when I played this game, so understandable. But we'll just have to keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and Ultra Ball here on the first turn. We'll go ahead and use this to grab Phanpy. Going to discard the Startling Megaphone and a Fighting Energy. And we'll go ahead and grab the little guy here. Drop that Strong Energy on to the Phanpy. And I'm going to go ahead and play the N as well. And I do have another Ultra Ball. I don't know if that's worth playing, though. I just have to discard too many resources, so probably not worth it there. So I'm just going to end the first turn there with a pass. Not much else we can do. Now my opponent is playing an Aromatisse deck. We see the Xerneas EX in the active spot, so we're going to have to deal with Aromatisse, all these Fairy Pokemon, the Fairy Transfer ability, and probably Max Potion healing off all sorts of damage. So we'll see if we can deal with it. Alright, so here, looks like I'm just going to go ahead and play that Ultra Ball anyway. We'll go ahead and search. I guess we can do a Phantump, we can do a Suicune, I can do... Well, actually, I already have a Suicune. Phantump or Snorlax or another Phanpy would be my choices, I think. I'm just going to grab Phantump, and we're going to attach that Muscle Band to Donphan and Professor Sycamore for a lot of cards. So, go ahead and drop that Float Stone onto the Suicune, retreat into Donphan. And I'm going to go with the spinning turn here for 100 damage. Look at that, 100 for just a single energy. And looking at my hand, I'm actually going to switch into the Phantump. My opponent doesn't seem to have any immediate threat to knock it out. And I have an Evo Soda along with a Float Stone that could turn into, Trevenant and just a retreat, and that would be cool. I guess I could have just gone into Suicune. I don't know why I did the Phantump. But my opponent totally ruined my plan by playing that N. Wasn't very nice. But one of the bright sides of last turn was we did get to counter our opponent's Fairy Garden. So there was no free retreating there from my opponent. And I was pretty fortunate here to draw a Float Stone, so I can retreat my Phantom. I do have a Pokemon fan club here. I'm going to go ahead and search for, looks like a Suicune and a another Phantom. And I do have a second Donphan in play as well. And this is where, it kind of gets a little tricky. What do I want to put this strong energy onto? Do I put it on the other Donphan? Do I put it on the first Donphan so I can power up for Wreck? Right now I'm just going to spread my energy out a little bit, and we'll go ahead and retreat. And spinning turn for another 100 damage. And that's actually going to be a knockout on turn 3 here, taking down that Xerneas EX. And of course we can switch into that Suicune. Alright, so my hand's not looking great, but we did take the first 2 prizes, have a pretty decent position here. And my opponent does have Mega Kangaskhan EX, which has a whopping 230 HP, but it is weak to fighting. So as long as we draw the correct cards at certain points, we should be able to knock out that Mega Kangaskhan EX. At least I would think so. Alright, so we see a third energy go onto the Xerneas and a Rainbow Spear. That's actually a knockout on the Suicune. Was not expecting that. Oh man. So now we got some trouble. Alright. So, this is going to be an awkward situation here. I have a Sycamore that I probably want to play. I have this double colorless. I probably want to drop onto a Donphan. We're just doing it in the active. Float Stone on the Phantom, and I am going to Professor Sycamore. Actually going to discard the Terrakion there. I probably could have benched that. He might be useful in the future against Mega Kangaskhan, but you know what? I feel like Donphan can probably carry us from here. I do have a Master Ball. I could play it right here, but I don't think there's any Pokemon I immediately need, so we're going to go ahead and just spinning turn for 60 and then switch into the Trevenant. So next turn, if we get another strong energy or I just attach a fighting, we could Wreck for the knockout, taking down that Xerneas. One of the cool things is Trevenant does block Max Potion, so we won't have to worry about any healing stuff. So that's pretty cool. My opponent does get another Fairy Garden into play, so that means he can retreat and put up another Pokemon. That is an option. So, I don't know. This is going to be an interesting game from here on out. Of course, Aromatisse being able to move around the Fairy energy makes things interesting. Fairy Garden giving the free retreat as well. And there we do see a couple more Pokemon. Mewtwo EX and Xerneas. So we may see some kind of musical chairs here with Pokemon now. With the Fairy Garden giving the free retreat and all sorts of stuff. You never really know what's going to happen next. Looks like Xerneas will come up. And we may just see a Geomancy at this point. Just searching for 2 more Fairy Energy to get into play. One of the downsides of Donphan is that, well, it just doesn't get one-hit knockouts very often. So, my opponent does have some time to sit back and do this sort of thing. I'm going to go for the Master Ball this turn, grabbing a Phanpy. Go ahead and get that down on the board. And we can go ahead and attach a Fighting Energy to it as well. Got a Colress here. We can play it for a big old 10 cards. Seems like a pretty good idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and shuffle in and draw 10 cards. That is enormous. So let's go ahead and retreat into Donphan, spinning turn, hit for 60, and then switch into the Trevenant. Sounds good to me. Alright. So, yeah, things are looking good right now. We got all sorts of stuff to work with. But my opponent's Pokemon are looking a little scary at this point. There's a Mewtwo EX I have to deal with. There is the Mega Kangaskhan we also will have to deal with at some point. Even the Xerneas are not pushovers. They can attack for 100 damage. So I'm kind of just banking on the fact that Trevenant is shutting off item cards at this point. Shutting off that Max Potion. And hopefully we can get a Fighting Stadium or something like that soon. The Mewtwo EX worries me quite a bit because X-Ball can do quite a bit of damage to my Donphans, and that's just not going to be cool. If I ever wanted to use Wreck to get a knockout. Like, I do have a Lysander in hand, and I have another strong energy. I could just wreck for a knockout on something, but if I did that, it just seems like Mewtwo would come up an X-Ball and then take down my Donphan, and that's not something I want to have happen. All right, we do just see the Fairy Wind, though, and, we have an interesting choice here. I do have the option to Lysander, and we could bring out Mega Kangaskhan and wreck for the knockout. Or we could bring out Mewtwo EX and wreck for the knockout, too. Both of those are decent options, but I feel like no matter which one I do, I'm just kind of putting out my Donphan with so much energy, and my opponent could easily respond with a knockout, getting back those item cards as well. I did get hit by a Fairy Wind, which is unusual. Aromatisse actually hitting me. Didn't expect that one. But yeah, this is just an awkward spot where I really wish I played more double colorless energy maybe. If I could power up 2 Donphans using a wreck, that would be awesome. I would probably be able to win then, just knocking out 2 big EXs, but we may play it a little conservatively here, just hitting the Aromatisse and switching to the bench. Wish I had another Muscle Band here to knock it out, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen. But we're going to go ahead with the spinning turn, hit for 80 damage, and then switch into Trevenant. I do have a switch in hand, so I will switch into the Trevenant with no damage on it. Otherwise, my opponent can actually retreat into the other Aromatisse and knock out my Trevenant, which would not be cool. Alright, so this has turned into a bit of a stalemate here. Nobody really wants to go with the big attackers, right? If my opponent brings out Mewtwo or Mega Kangaskhan, I will simply wreck that thing and knock it out. At this point, I'm kind of regretting discarding the Terrakion before. That would be so great against Mega Kangaskhan. I wouldn't even have to worry about that thing. I'll retaliate with a Silver Bangle or with a Fighting Stadium out there. Actually, we would need Silver Bangle, but that would knock out Mega Kangaskhan. We do see a Skyla for a Colress there. So my opponent's going to get a huge hand next turn. And this just brings up the question, do I go for the wreck this turn? It's very tempting, but man, I'm just so afraid. I mean, if I go with the wreck and then, Lysander out an EX and then a wreck, I'm just so afraid of Donphan getting knocked out. Which one do I go for? Do I go for the Mewtwo? Do I go for the Kangaskhan? I'm going to go ahead and attach to the Donphan, but I think we'll just continue with spinning turn. My opponent went for a Colress off the Skyla, so odds are he won't have a Lysander this turn. Probably would have played it last turn if he did. So I'm just going to go with the spinning turn again and just kind of wait, see what I draw, and we'll see what happens from there. Perhaps playing a little bit too conservatively, maybe going after the Mewtwo there wouldn't have been a bad play, since then we just have to deal with a Mega Kangaskhan to win. But hey, what do I know? So Aromatisse, both of them have 80 damage on it. Really wishing I had a Landorus EX or a Stunfisk in here now. We could knock out both those Aromatisse at once. That would be awesome. But we do not play one. Those are just cards to keep in mind. Landorus EX is a pretty expensive card, though. Probably worth about half of this deck's entire cost. So definitely not fitting into building on a budget anytime soon. Stunfisk, though, with Muddy Water. Certainly an option. Probably costs about 25 cents for one of those. Just keep that in mind. Alright, so this is still a very flimsy position for me. And you can see my opponent taking plenty of time to think about this one. It is just a very complicated situation. But oh no! Lysander coming out. That is not cool. I did not think my opponent would have that. And now my big bad Donphan is in some big, big trouble. This is very, 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 very bad news. Yikes. Okay, I really didn't expect that at all. Now Mewtwo is going to be able to X-Ball my poor Donphan, which had the 4 energy on it. So clearly I should have gone for the wreck when I had the chance. And I just missed my opportunity. Was just a little too passive there. Should have been more aggressive. My mistake, but well. Alright, so I do draw an Evo Soda. We'll go ahead and get that Donphan into play. Get the third one going. I do have a Lysander. Don't think it's worth playing that at this point. Let's see. Spinning turn right now is going to do 80 damage, so I don't know if I need to attach the Silver Bangle immediately. Maybe I just will do that, just to get that out there. And let's go ahead and retreat into the Donphan. And spinning turn. We're going to hit for 110 damage, I believe. Softening up that Mewtwo quite a bit. And then going into, we can do Trevenant again, just because I don't really have anything great to switch into. And shutting off items, it's never really a bad thing. So now my opponent is actually bringing up Aromatisse again. I'm actually going to get Fairy Winded for a knockout. Ay. I can't believe this is happening. Now, we do have that Lysander in hand, though. So that is a good thing. We can go ahead and Lysander the Mewtwo, knock it out with a spinning turn. Next turn, we'll go down to 2 prizes, and who knows what happens from there. So I will go ahead and promote Donphan, of course. Got the Float Stone. And let's see. I guess we can go ahead, Lysander. The question here for me is, who do I switch into? Trevenant again? I don't really know. Suicune, perhaps. Snorlax may not be bad. It's got a lot of HP, difficult to knock out. So this is going to be my big question here. Who do I switch into? I'm going to go with the spinning turn for 110. And I guess I can do Snorlax just because it has the most HP. Looking back, perhaps Trevenant was the right move. Just shutting off item cards. Because it seems like the way to go. And I got my Lysander out of the prizes. If I would have known that, I think I definitely would have just sent out Trevenant. Knowing I had Lysander in hand. But let's see what happens here. Mega Kangaskhan will enter the field. And of course that Wham Bam Punch is devastating. Does 100 damage. Plus, wait, does it do, well, plus 30 for each heads. So, I mean, that can add up very quickly. You just need 2 heads with that to knock out a Pokemon EX with a Muscle Band. And there's a Victini as well. Oh, no, there's a Dowsing Machine, though. So this could be some very bad news. Yep, there's a Lysander. Definitely regretting my decision to promote Snorlax. But then again, if I would have just promoted Trevenant, my opponent would have just, I don't know, attacked me with Aromatisse. I don't know what would have happened. Maybe there would have been an N involved. Who knows what would have happened. But all we can look at is what we can do now. There's the Lysander again. Donphan coming out. There's the Wham Bam Punch, and that will be a knockout. If my opponent had flipped double tails, perhaps we could have had a nice situation there, but that's okay. I will promote Donphan here. We'll go ahead and drop the Fighting Stadium, countering the Fairy Stadium, and also getting some additional damage here. So that's actually a really, really nice play there. Being able to do that, my opponent has just done the 1 Lysander and the 1 Dowsing Machine, so there is an opportunity for my opponent to play 1 more Lysander and maybe wipe out my last Donphan, and that just wouldn't be pretty, but let's see here. Going to go ahead with a spinning turn, hit for 120 damage on that Mega Kangaskhan EX, promoting the Trevenant, just trying to stop Max Potion. That's the biggest thing here. I want to stop Max Potion. If we can do that, and if Donphan survives, we can go ahead and Lysander the Mega Kangaskhan if it retreats, and then spinning turn for the win. I could have promoted, Snorlax or Suicune, but again, that would have given my opponent access to that Max Potion, which I did not want to see. Now, if my opponent does do something like Lysander out Donphan and knock it out, I actually do have a crazy way to win still. I could Lysander out the Victini and block it out there. My opponent doesn't seem to play any way to attack with it. But we just see the retreat and the Fairy Wind. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that Lysander. And there's the spinning turn for 120 damage. Taking down the big bad Mega Kangaskhan EX and taking the victory for good old Donphan. It would have been a lot cooler if I went for the block deck out route, though. We're just going to go for good old-fashioned knockouts here, though. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed Donphan and the Building on a Budget series. Hopefully I'll have some more of that for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I will see you guys next time.